Japan deliberately released thousands of octopuses into the open ocean. Nobody expected what would be waiting beneath the surface less than a year later. It started as a straightforward restoration project. Decades of industrial overfishing had stripped entire stretches of coastline bare, collapsing reef systems that had taken centuries to form. Fish populations had crashed, kelp forests had vanished. Entire sections of seafloor sat lifeless, stripped down to bare rock and sediment. Marine agencies needed a way to bring life back, and octopuses, known for colonizing damaged habitats quickly and aggressively, seemed like the obvious solution. So they built artificial reef structures across dozens of sites along the coastline, seeded them with octopuses bred specifically for the program, and waited. Standard practice. Nothing unusual about the method. Nobody involved anticipated it would become one of the strangest cases in modern marine biology. The first dive team to check on the reefs expected exactly what the textbooks predicted: scattered dens, a handful of opportunistic burrows, maybe some minor rearranging of debris. Nothing remarkable. What they found instead made them surface immediately and request a second team, just to confirm they weren't imagining it. The reefs weren't just occupied, they were engineered. Tunnels branched off into connected chambers. Passageways led to what looked like distinct storage areas, separate from resting areas, separate from what appeared to be feeding zones. It wasn't the layout of an animal simply claiming shelter. It looked deliberate, structured, like something built with a plan, not scavenged together out of instinct. That alone might have been written off as a one-time anomaly, maybe an unusually resourceful colony, or a strange accident of geography, except when the next site was surveyed 50 kilometers up the coast, with no shared current and no possible migration path between the two locations. Divers found the same design, then a third site, further still, then a fourth. By the time researchers had surveyed a dozen separate reefs, the pattern was undeniable, and undeniably difficult to explain through anything resembling normal animal behavior. These weren't neighboring colonies exchanging information. These were isolated populations. Some separated by stretches of open ocean octopuses had no known way of crossing, all converging on an almost identical architectural blueprint. Word spread through the marine biology community fast, and the scientific consensus that was supposed to follow never really arrived. Instead, the researchers split into camps, and none of them fully agreed. One camp argued it had to be pure instinct, a behavior sitting dormant in octopus DNA for generations, only triggered now because the artificial reefs happened to create the exact right conditions to unlock it. It was a clean explanation on paper. It was also nearly impossible to prove, since nothing like this tunnel and chamber design had ever been documented in wild octopus populations before, not once in over a century of marine research. A second camp leaned toward something even more controversial: social learning. The idea that knowledge was somehow being transmitted between individuals, or even across generations, despite octopuses being famously solitary animals with lifespans rarely exceeding 2 years, and virtually zero parental contact after hatching. If that theory held up, it would force a complete rewrite of what scientists thought they understood about octopus cognition and memory. Both theories had defenders. Both theories had holes big enough to drive a research vessel through, but a smaller, quieter group of investigators wasn't looking at the octopuses at all anymore. They were looking at the reefs themselves, specifically at who had designed the underlying structures and why every single artificial reef module, across every single site, happened to share the exact same geometric proportions long before a single octopus had ever been introduced to the water. That question led somewhere nobody on the original restoration project had thought to check. The concrete modules used to build the reefs, the molds they were cast from, the internal channel shapes built into every batch, all of it traced back to one manufacturing blueprint. A design created years earlier by structural engineers optimizing purely for water flow and long-term durability. Not animal behavior, not octopus cognition, simple hydrodynamics. The tunnels the octopuses had supposedly built weren't entirely their own creation after all. They were following architecture that already existed, expanding on grooves, channels, and cavities that had been engineered into the concrete from the very beginning, for reasons that had nothing to do with marine life. It wasn't telepathy. It wasn't some undiscovered form of inherited memory passed silently between generations. It was a hidden variable nobody had thought to account for a decision made in a structural engineering office, years before a single octopus arrived, that ended up quietly shaping wild animal behavior across an entire coastline without a single person realizing it was happening. Once the connection was made, researchers went back and reviewed the original reef blueprints line by line. Every recurring feature the octopuses had engineered lined up almost perfectly, with pre-existing structural elements in the concrete. The chambers followed load-bearing cavities. The tunnels followed precast drainage channels. What looked like intelligent design from the octopuses was, in large part, intelligent design from the engineers, just not the kind anyone in marine biology had thought to look for. It's a strange kind of anticlimax, and also somehow an even stranger discovery than the one everyone was originally chasing, because it raises a bigger question, one researchers still can't fully answer. How much of what looks like remarkable animal intelligence in the wild is actually a response to something humans quietly built into the environment without ever intending to shape behavior at all? It's not the first time this has come up, and marine biologists suspect it won't be the last. As more of the ocean floor gets reshaped by artificial reefs, shipwrecks, and human-made structures, the line between wild behavior and environmentally engineered behavior is getting harder and harder to draw. So what do you think was really guiding this pattern? Instinct that's always been there? Knowledge somehow passed between generations, or a structural decision nobody connected until researchers went looking? Follow for more real investigations into hidden ecosystems, engineering, and the unexpected consequences of human intervention.